this is the end of the Trump administration. This is the beginning of the lame duck presidency. It's obvious to everyone, even his most ardent supporters show up to the White House, like Laura Ingraham, and she's kind of shocked, going, what the hell's going on?
If you're just going to be owned by the Jews and go against everybody that actually is America first
and cover for
pedophiles, then you can fuck off, Trump. You're losing people quick.
Yeah,
these are from the very first Trump rally we ever went to in 2017 when he came to Topeka, Kansas, and did a rally for Chris Kobach. Throw him in there. Piece of shit.
Well, MAGA is dead, at least according to some of Donald Trump's biggest dick riders, and they're hopping off of his cock for a number of reasons. His comments about Americans not being talented as a justification for H-1B visas, his support for Israel, the Epstein revelations, and also his relentless attacks on former allies that Trump supporters still like, such as Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that one really seemed to be the straw that broke the camel's back, which led to Trump's own supporters burning their MAGA hats in protest, to which the patriotic blonde responded, "What a sad end to something we all worked so hard for. I never thought it would end this way." Other former Trump supporters with prominent followings on Twitter, like Evan Kilgore, shared a meme of him throwing away his MAGA hat and putting on an America First hat. He also tweeted MAGA is dead and shared this tweet from neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, who says, "So now Ben Shapiro, Randy Fine, and Lindsey Graham are considered MAGA, but Marjorie Greene, Tucker Carlson, and Thomas Massie are not? Your Israel First, MAGA movement is dead. The America First movement is the future." And to be clear, these lines aren't being drawn because anti-Israel conservatives like Nick Fuentes are opposed to apartheid and genocide. They couldn't care less about Palestinians. Rather, they're motivated by anti-Semitism, and they feel like the Republican Party should also tolerate hatred against Jewish people, seeing as how they're okay with bigotry against basically every other marginalized community. And that's not a straw man. As Dropsite News reports, Nick Fuentes, who has praised Hitler and is openly anti-Semitic, says Republicans are hypocrites for tolerating cruelty and abuse towards Muslims, black people, and other minorities while drawing the line at anti-Semitism. He argues his own politics are simply the logical endpoint of that bigotry. And he's not necessarily wrong about that hypocrisy there, but I mean, imagine making your entire identity about being mad that the party you identify with, that you agree with on like 99.9% of the issues, won't also let you hate another minority group. It's just such a clown show. But that argument is resonating with Trump supporters for obvious reasons, because, you know, you can't greenlight hate speech against certain groups, but then draw the lines against others, right? And the same thing is happening towards Indian Americans, who are seeing a lot of backlash towards MAGA, and they're being told to go back to their country and whatnot. I mean, you just look at any post from Vivek Ramaswamy and you see all of the vitriol being directed his way by people who are supposed to be part of that America First movement or Make America Great Again movement or whatever the fuck they're calling themselves these days. It seems arbitrary and inconsistent to not let them hate all groups of people, since hating minorities is like the bread and butter of the Republican Party, and that is exactly why Fuentes' Groyper movement has been able to capture the heart and soul of the Republican Party, because it is viewed as, I guess, the purest form of American conservatism. And, you know, the conservatives who are currently angry about Nick Fuentes' rise, they have to understand that this is the problem that they created for themselves. They made a monster that they're no longer able to control, and it's creating real rifts within the GOP. For example, the Heritage Foundation, which is responsible for Project 2025, is imploding currently because of its president's refusal to unequivocally condemn Tucker Carlson for platforming Nick Fuentes. But that's just one dimension of the splintering that we're seeing, because Epstein is turning out to be another sticking point, with Trump deciding to burn his bridge with Marjorie Taylor Greene entirely because of it. And on Friday, he announced that he was withdrawing his support for, quote, wacky Marjorie Greene, because all she does is complain, complain, complain. And he seems to confirm AOC's account that Marjorie was mad at Donald Trump because he discouraged her from running for the Senate or governor in Georgia. And Trump says that she's mad because he's not taking her calls, but says that he can't take a ranting lunatic's call every day, and goes on to say that he'll endorse a primary opponent against Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, even though MAGA NPCs like Laura Loomer and Cat Turd immediately flipped on Marjorie Greene like that, a lot, if not most, of Trump supporters actually seemed pretty sympathetic towards with Marjorie Taylor Greene, especially because she says that it led to a harassment campaign against her where pizzas were being called to her house. And on top of that, a pipe bomb threat was called into her construction company, to which she says, President Trump's unwarranted and vicious attacks against me were a dog whistle to dangerous radicals that could lead to serious attacks on me and my family. She then goes on to say that the rhetoric against her could ultimately lead to a harmful or even deadly outcome, and adds, also the timing of this happens to be days before we take the vote on releasing the Epstein files. Now, in another tweet, she says, I am now being contacted by private security firms with warnings for my safety as a hotbed of threats against me are being fueled and egged on by the most powerful man in the world, the man I supported and helped get elected. Aggressive rhetoric attacking me has historically led to death threats and multiple convictions of men who were radicalized by the same type of rhetoric being directed at me right now, this time by the President of the United States. As a woman, I take threats from men seriously. I now have a small understanding of the fear and pressure the women who are victims of Jeffrey Epstein and his cabal must feel. Now she invokes Epstein again, saying it's why Trump is attacking her, writing, it really makes you wonder what's in those files and who and what country is putting so much pressure on him. And that's a rhetorical question. The actual answer is Israel, which we'll get to in a moment. But, you know, it's a good question for her to ask because I'm glad that somebody with clout in the MAGA movement is finally saying this. But with that being said, you know, in response to her condemning the vitriol being directed her way and harassment, you know, it begs the question, why should we feel sympathy for her when she's co-signed all of Trump's vicious attacks against other people, including her own colleagues in the House like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib? Like, why should we think that all of a sudden, you know, this is something that is condemnable now that it's being directed at you? And she actually had a surprisingly reasonable answer to that question when it was posed to her by Dana Bash on CNN.
Dana, I think that's fair criticism. And I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country. And it's been something I've thought about a lot, especially since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, is that I'm only responsible for myself and my own words and actions. And I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another, and we need to figure out a new path forward that is focused on the American people, because as Americans, no matter what side of the aisle we're on, we have far more in common than we have differences. Yeah. And we need to be able to respect each other with our disagreements.
Sounds good, but show us, don't tell us, because you were just attacking trans people the other day, saying that we should deny them health care, and she was attacking immigrants the week before that. So you'll have to forgive me for not really buying her bullshit, because I think that what we're seeing right now is a political calculation. It's obvious that she's making a maneuver in order to be the heir to Trump's throne. She's presenting herself as a more civilized alternative to Donald Trump in order to minimize opposition from normies and liberals in 2028, but also to present herself to the base as a more ideologically consistent America First alternative to Donald Trump, who betrayed everybody. I think it's a really savvy move, but I don't think that she realizes that it's not probably going to pay off, because I don't think that the whole fascist girl boss act is going to resonate with Trump's misogynistic base, with the Republican Party's misogynistic base. Like, we saw the way that they reacted to Nikki Haley running. So I just don't know how you talking about weak men is going to land in this party. Nonetheless, have at it. I'm glad that she's doing this. I approve of this political move that she's making, since obviously it is accelerating the decline of the Trump era, which is great. Now, on the subject of Donald Trump, he was asked about the threats that he incited against her, and predictably, he did not give a shit at all.
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
So yeah, he's doing what he always does after steamrolling a former ally. He's doubling down and tripling down and saying what he said about them before. The difference this time, though, is that I'm not sure that it's going to land as well as it usually does, because his base really is pissed off. Although I don't want to overstate their anger, because, you know, the online discourse might not necessarily reflect how right-wing normies are feeling, the people who watch Fox News, because, you know, he still does seem to have a really strong hold on GOP propaganda outlets, notably Fox News, which is tacitly defending him by talking about anything but Jeffrey Epstein, including items Taco Bell might be removing from the menu in lieu of the Epstein files. Although in Fox News' defense, if they really do remove all potato items and the triple layer nachos, that is objectively newsworthy and a damn shame, might I add. But on a serious note, you still do have some Trump supporters sticking by his side, even though we're seeing more and more damaging Epstein revelations come out. We talked about Megyn Kelly's abhorrent defense on Friday, but there are others, like this guy, Christopher Aldana on Twitter, who are coming out as sexual predators themselves in support of Donald Trump. Others are making an argument similar to Megyn Kelly, where they're essentially questioning the age of consent and saying it's technically not pedophilia, actually it's a phobophilia, and they're trying to make these distinctions and split hairs, and it's nauseating, but it's not necessarily surprising. But even though some Trump supporters aren't drawing a line at possible pedophilia, they are drawing a line at a different place regarding Epstein. And that was explained by Marjorie Taylor Greene on CNN. That line is Israel, of course.
We saw Jeffrey Epstein with ties to Ehud Barak. We saw him making business deals with them, also business deals that involved the Israeli government, and seems to have led into their intel agencies. And I think the right question is to ask is, was Jeffrey Epstein working for Israel?
And that right there, my friends, is another reason why Trump supporters are still very much interested in the Epstein files, even if they don't necessarily care about justice for Epstein's victims, because, you know, there's reason to believe that Epstein really was Mossad, and this feeds into their anger about Trump being Israel first as opposed to America first. And I just want to point out that these people are opposed to Israel, again, not because they care about genocide or apartheid or Palestinian people and their struggle, but because they actually are anti-Semitic. They are what, all the pundits were saying college students were, who were opposed to the genocide. And perhaps if Republicans spent the last 2 years criticizing people in their own party who were actually Nazis instead of peaceful pro-Palestinian protesters and saying that they were the ones who were anti-Semitic, maybe we wouldn't be here. Maybe if conservatives hadn't spent decades teaching their base to hate every single marginalized community, then maybe we wouldn't be here. But, this is a monster of their own making, and the chickens have come home to roost. But regardless of where they land on Epstein, they've at least got to be smart enough to realize that the revelations are indefensible, even by their own standards. And I say this because in one Epstein email with his brother, I don't know the specifics, I'm not going to pull it up, but there was basically a claim from Epstein that Trump sucked Bubba's dick, which is Bill Clinton's nickname, who used to be friends with Donald Trump. And there's a photograph of him grabbing Bill Clinton's dick. Now, we don't have any additional context. We have no idea if Epstein was saying this in jest or not, but it led to a lot of jokes online regardless. And even a story about how Ghislaine's horse is named Bubba. And I don't know if that's been debunked yet or if a headline that was fake that's being shared about that was debunked. Either way, people online are asking, so did Trump suck Bill Clinton's dick or a horse's dick? And that is something that I don't think a lot of conservatives are going to want to defend, although they've surprised me before. So, if we see other conservatives come out and talk about how, they've sucked a horse cock or two, it honestly wouldn't surprise me at this point. But putting all of that aside, the latest revelations contradict Donald Trump's claims about his relationship with Epstein, and it really speaks to a perverted pattern of behavior from Donald Trump. And we're reaching the point where it really feels like the dam is starting to burst open, because Trump is now calling for the release of the Epstein files himself, even though he's fought this for months now. So, if you don't want the Epstein files to get out, but all of a sudden you're saying release them, what does that mean? And nobody really knows the answer to that. We don't know if he's going to try to redact his name and release the files that way, or just leave his name in there and just continue to claim that anything about him in the files is a hoax. Either way, his acquiescence signals that he knows this is a losing battle, and fighting to prevent the release is worse for him than it getting out and him just lying and saying it's fake. Although, it's going to be tough to maintain that lie given more that we're learning about Donald Trump in stories like this from his former fixer's daughter.
You were playing tennis and you came off the court. And here's how it was written in Vanity Fair. Somehow Trump's attention was diverted to another skirt walking off a tennis court. Quote, "Look at that piece of ass," Cohen recalls Trump saying as he whistled and pointed. Quote, "I would love some of that." It so happened that Trump was referring to Cohen's then 15-year-old daughter, Samantha. Do you remember that moment? Because it goes on to write that after that, you came over, he wanted you to give him a kiss, and he said, "When did you get such a great figure?"
So, as I told Emily, the story is a little bit less clear to me. I'm sure many women can relate. You become desensitized to men making these kinds of comments to you, and you allow them to go over your head, and you kind of tune out the noise. But what stood out to me in that moment was he said to my dad, "Well, there's no way that she got her looks from you. Thank God you married a beautiful woman." And I was desensitized to men making creepy comments about me, but I was not desensitized to someone blatantly insulting and degrading my father in front of me, someone who I looked up to and loved very much. And that was very upsetting to me. And that made me think, okay, maybe Trump doesn't treat my father so well.
And I do want to get to that in a moment about the way he treated your father. But first, back to that for a second. He also, I mean, at least in the book, it says that he said to you, "Be careful, I'll be dating your friends in a few years." He was married to Melania at that time when he said that to you. Did you ever get the impression that he was hitting on you?
No, I didn't get the impression that he was hitting on me directly, but I had the impression that he was interested in younger women and that, you know, women would age out for him.
So she's confirming what we all suspected, that Donald Trump is attracted to children, which is despicable and disgusting, but not surprising given what we already knew about this man, given what we knew about the Epstein files, given what we knew about him walking into dressing rooms at teen beauty pageants, given what we knew about the 26 women who accused him of sexual misconduct, given what we knew about him being found liable for rape of E. Jean Carroll. And when you step back and you look at the bigger picture and you see the puzzle pieces being put together and you see it all come into focus, it doesn't look good. We'll put it that way. But again, Epstein is one of many reasons why his movement is starting to splinter. And I don't think that it's too early to actually declare that this is the beginning of the end of the MAGA movement. This is the beginning of the end of the Trump era in the United States. Because even though he's been criticized by the base before, you know, here and there on vaccines and whatnot, he's never experienced backlash this intense by his own supporters for a sustained amount of time. They always fall in line, they always acquiesce, but this time it does feel different. But even though, you know, I'm concerned that the next iteration of American fascism could be worse, given how they're moving towards outright Nazism, I am happy to at least see the movement fall apart, given the short-term benefit that would yield for all of us, because it threatens his grip on power. So I hope that the infighting continues. I hope that Marjorie Taylor Greene continues to attack him, and I hope that he responds, because if they're tearing each other apart, they'll be less effective at tearing the entire fucking country apart. So let them fight.